Welcome to plzsoccer.com. I am delighted to be joined today by former Celtic, Motherwell and Australia striker Scott McDonald. Delighted to have you here in the studio, Scott.
Thanks, Alison. Delighted to be here. I think you missed a few clubs there, mind you. It's quite long, so I can't blame you for that.
I know you're back here working in some coaching badges and still,
Yeah.
but first of all, it's the morning after the night before for us in Scotland. Was Scott McTominay denied the biggest moment of his career last night?
Look, it was a wonderful free kick, wasn't it? And it's still up for debate right now in terms of, was it a foul? Was it offside? Look, we obviously didn't get the line to see if it was offside. Potentially, probably, a foot, a tiny bit of the foot was offside, and then he's interfering with play. So I think, unfortunately, the decision was right, but just the whole confusion of what it was the disappointment of it, which was, again, a decent performance from Scotland away from home, and really frustrated Spain for great periods of that game. And it looked like at one point that, you could see the panic in the Spanish camp for the majority of that game, and the frustration that Scotland gave them, that they were going to hang on to it. But I think that was a real telling point. Obviously, that goal being disallowed and sort of probably put Scotland off a wee bit more than probably what it did to Spain to kick them on. And look, they just have to now regroup and go again. They've got a friendly to look forward to now, and it's up to just wait and see what other results are, for the rest of this period of the campaign until they come back for the qualification process once again.
You've obviously experienced playing at major tournaments, and I think Scotland were out in the cold for so long. Just incredible now that they're within touching distance.
It's been amazing. Steve Clarke's done a fantastic job, and it's just been amazing. The performances that Scotland have put on, and the individual ones as well, and to have three left-footed players in your defence as well, performing and be able to fit them all in. The future's bright for Scotland at the moment, and I have no doubts that they'll make the Euros as well, and really looking forward to obviously seeing the Tartan Army in full force. Obviously, the disappointment of being through that COVID process the last time round, so it'll be nice for the supporters to be able to enjoy it and go to Germany and obviously make a scene.
Is he one of the coaches? Is Steve one of the coaches that you've maybe looked to as you're going through your own badges and your own process now, and just establishing yourself in that kind of role?
Yeah, well, we're fortunate enough to actually listen and hear from Steve over the process of the pro licence as well. We've been so fortunate in terms of some of the coaches that we've able to sort of have on the licence itself. Jose Mourinho, Villas-Boas, Steve Clarke, Jesse Marsh, and then obviously this week going down to London and experiencing things at Brentford, and then going to David Moyes at West Ham, and obviously that man Ange Postecoglou at Tottenham and what he's doing there and great things that he's doing. So yeah, I mean, I think it's been brilliant for the SFA have put on a great pro licence for everyone. It's been a bit longer for me than most because obviously coming back and forth from Australia to get there, so it's been a long process, but one that's been well worth it. And the biggest thing that you can probably take away from all of them, it's their message is clear, very, very simplified and consistent always in the principles of what they want within their football clubs. Ange
obviously would be the obvious one. Am I right in thinking that you played with Ange at under 20 level? I don't think you'd have crossed paths at senior level with Australia, but you'd have played with him.
No, unfortunately, he didn't pick me for the national team. I wasn't brave enough to ask him about that, obviously, the other night. But look, I had a lot of dealings with Ange in two World Youth Cup tournaments, which was great. And obviously, he was developing, through that. And one of the things he did touch on was that was a big period in his learning of his coaching career and how it developed him as a coach to be on an international stage and to actually develop players, which is something that he hadn't done to that point, and actually learning how to actually technically coach a lot better, and improved him a lot to go on to the things that he's done.
He's just been named as Manager of the Month for the second successive month. His stock, I don't think, has ever been higher. What is it about Ange? One, were you surprised at the impact he's made, and two, what is it about him you think that's made him so successful recently?
Look, he's very consistent and very clear on his message of what he wants. That was very evident in terms of speaking to him over this pro licence course, and he was very open with his game model and how he likes to play. And when you listen to him and he speaks, And he openly says, I'll show you it because you can't replicate it because you're not me. You need to find your own way of doing things, whether or not that's the same system, fair enough, but you're not going to coach it like me because there's only one of me and there's only one of you, which I found very interesting in itself. But like I said, actually, when you work through his system and what he actually does, if you're on that level of playing at the highest level, you understand it very quickly and very simply, exactly what he wants. And the consistency is always there with the message. And that's why he gets success. And obviously the way he manages people, I don't think he's as cold as everyone makes. He's very aware of everything that's around him and likes to be in control of everything, but he works well with his team, albeit it's always a new team that he always goes to. And he says that openly, that basically that's because it keeps him alert and on his toes all the time to keep improving and to keep showing everyone exactly what the message is.
I heard him speaking to the Australia squad before they play England, and he was saying everyone loves me now, but I've had to work that bit harder because of where I've come from, because your background is in Australia. Did you feel that too as a player, and do you still think there's an element of that?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's always that bit between your teeth to go and prove people wrong. I think Ange has always had that as well. There was a period in his career where there's been negative press, whether that was particularly mostly actually with the Australian national setup, whether it was in when he was the youth national coach or even when he was the senior men's coach. And for as good a job he's done, there was a lot of people back home that were very, very critical of him. And I don't think there's no love lost even with the Australian media back home. And I don't think we'll ever see him come back home, to be perfectly honest. I think his life is well set in Europe now and exactly what he's doing now. And it's no surprise to Ange, it's a surprise to everyone else, and that just shows the level of, look, Aussies are well renowned in the past anyhow of being very assured of themselves, and Ange is no different like that, and it's got him to where he's got to, because if he didn't believe in himself and his processes, then he certainly wouldn't have that success. What
would you take from him? What are the methodology and what are the hints that you would take from his kind of style, and how does it differ from your own?
Look, I think everyone's different. I think I've touched on it there, and just in terms of understanding that when you're speaking to your players particularly, or if your staff, that the message is always consistent and it's very, very clear and simplified for them to be able to then go on to actually get to the processes of what you want. Now, mine might be different to his, but you've got to work out the best way and the best formula of understanding what that is. And I won't go into his principles, but he understands exactly what he's always making decisions of. And he always wants to make that decision. He doesn't want to leave it to anyone else. That's his job at the end of the day. And I think probably that's been one of the most important things that I learned over the period of listening to him.
You touched on it yourself. He comes with a reputation of being very cold and quite distant from players at youth level and at under 20 level. Did you get an indication of that?
Yeah, I did. Look, he's not one for small talk, very much not. But if it's anything to do with football, then he's very passionate about it, and he speaks very openly and very comfortably with you. He just won't ask you how your day was. It's as simple as that. But yeah, look, there was a couple of instances, when I was, he was coaching me, and I was his captain at one tournament. I think I've said this story before, but it was kind of like we needed to play Brazil in the last qualification game in the group stages of the World Youth Cup. We needed a result to get through to the next stages, and I'd scored in one of the games and played in both of them, and then he just pulled me in his actual hotel room at the time, and sit down. Yep, tactically you don't fit into this game tomorrow. I'm not going to play you. And that was it. Captain. And that was it, captain. And you're sort of scratching your head and too scared to actually even say, well, I'm your captain. Couldn't go even down that route, but it proved to be actually the right decision because we won the game.
Were you brave enough to bring it up last week?
I brought it up the last time I see him. We just had a joke about it. I said, the worst thing you actually did make a mistake. I said it was actually bringing me back for the next game because we didn't win it. So, but obviously he's a great coach, and he always sticks by what he believes in. He's not afraid to make those decisions, like I said, and he always wants to make them. You
would have been at Millwall, I think, when he then took over the...
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so a little bit of a funny period for me. So, yeah, as much as it was disappointing, not being able to get him because the other managers we had prior to that in the national team said, I think I was only about 30 at the time, and you always feel as the individual that you're always got something to give, but in terms of probably how he likes to play and what he sees, I don't fit into as a player ever to what he wants to be or what he wanted to do. So you've got to understand that, and I think as you progress and you mature, I think you understand that a little bit better.
You mentioned you were down, obviously, to speaking to Davy Moyes. How was that? You'd see kind of similar traits, I think, in Moyes along with Ange Postecoglou.
Yeah, totally two different ways. Obviously how they want to play, and in terms of what David said was quite resonating in terms of, you want to be a long-term manager, then you've got to win football matches. It's as simple as that, and you will get sacked along the way. It's just part of the process, and how you respond and how you react from that, and how you come back and what you've learnt from those times. But first and foremost, find a way to win. And I think David's been doing that throughout his whole career. Always found a way to win, and he's had huge success doing it, along with the lows that he's had. But obviously, right now, getting the rewards and won his first trophy. In Europe last season, and things are going very, very well again for him, obviously this season. But they have a clear identity of what they do and how they want to play, and particularly down in England, you get the fortune of the money, and they're able to go and get the players that they've profiled as well.
What's been your own experiences in this early stage of your development?
Look, I think when you begin as a coach, you want to prove to everyone that you can do it, and you're off your chair all the time, you're fighting with everyone and you're fighting with everything, and trying to impress everyone around you and your players, and get them on board with what you do. I think as you slowly go on, you become a lot calmer, a lot more thinking in the process of what you are doing, and there's no question from the beginning though, you believe in what you are, but I'm not afraid to change as well. I think that's the one thing I'm not right now, because I'm still learning about the game and still learning what I like and what I don't like. And I think a lot of young coaches particularly can get stuck in, right, I've seen Pep do this, or I've seen Ange do that, and that's what I want to do. I think you've just got to go out there and find what you like and what works for you, and obviously what you're working with. That's always important, because the players are the most important, and you've got to understand what they are and what they want, and what they like to do, and what's going to give them the best possible opportunity to get the rewards, and that's obviously winning football matches. And if you can't do that, then you're going to fail as a coach immediately. So you've got to find a way firstly, and in those strengths, and can they then work into the formula of how you want to play the game as well. And if you get lucky enough to get a bit of money, then you can then obviously go and profile the player that you actually want.
What's been the biggest learning curve for you?
I think just to be a lot calmer. I think, look, I was always a fiery character anyway. I want my teams to be aggressive. I like to be on the front foot in everything we do. They know that. The standard's always to be upheld. And the way that we train is always at a high intensity. But I think more importantly is just to understand my players more in terms of off the pitch stuff. It's not really on the pitch where we get the rewards on the pitch, but we only get that if the players are right off it. And I think understanding now, look, there's a lot on that sort of mental health side and everything that goes with it. But your players need to be very, very happy and healthy off the pitch. And if they're doing that, they come into the environment a lot better, and you usually get the performances with that. So it's understanding that process a little bit more and giving more time to yourself. And at the moment, I'm pretty much doing everything along with my assistant. But that's a great thing when you start at the lower levels, that you have to be responsible for everything, and you learn a lot more. And as you go up, then you can sort of then delve into giving off those responsibilities. And again, that's another challenge in itself.
So you think you'll be quite hands-on?
Well, yeah, at the moment I am. But obviously giving everyone a role within the staff as well, and giving them value. I think that's important as you go along. And again, as you go along, there's more and more staffs that you have to deal with. So you're not just dealing with the playing group, you're dealing with the personnel as well, and how you get the balance of that. And getting them to be aligned with you is going to be the biggest challenge, and getting everyone to work in the one process.
Will we see you back here?
Oh, look, I'd never say never. I'm enjoying the sunshine right now, and I'm enjoying the project that I've got at my football club at the moment. And for the meantime, I'm quite happy doing that, and just growing. And I think in Australian football as well, there's another side where it's a much more tactical game and a slower game because of the weather. particularly in terms of how we can press and how high press, and more of a chess game in terms of how we start football matches, which I quite like, and developing processes and tactically how you like to do things and how you like to build. It's a little bit different in Scottish football, I still think, because a lot of it's based around results, whereas you get probably a little bit more time to develop how you like to do things in a country like mine. So I'm quite happy doing that at the moment.
One of the big challenges, of course, for Scottish coaches here, such as Brendan Rodgers at Celtic, is just bridging that chasm between domestic success and challenging in Europe and in Champions League. Celtic, obviously, it's been a difficult start to them. It's been very difficult across the last decade. But as they prepare for this Athletico Madrid doubleheader, how do you feel about their chances at Celtic Park?
Look, there's no question it's going to be very difficult to even get to the next stages of European football now that sucker punch the other week there against Lazio to concede that goal that late on, in a performance that I thought was very, very good from Celtic for majority of that game. To then go and lose it was such a kick in the teeth. And look, I think looking back at that, I think you've got to, when you have those home games, you've got to get maximum points, and it's been a decade since Celtic have done that in European football. So it's been tough. There's no question, and the crowd were always the 12th man, even when I was playing, and that's slowly gone away from the belief of the support, I think, a little bit as well, because the result just hasn't been there in the highest echelon. In the Champions League, they've had success, in the Europa League at times, but they need to find a way to win. But Brendan certainly won't go away from what he believes in and how he likes to do things. But I think we're seeing a transition in the team at the moment in terms of it isn't really his team. And it's taking time for them to actually develop into what he wants them to do, from what Ange wanted, slightly different. And it's going to take time in terms of the recruitment process as well, of what he wants. Look, I think it's evident for me in terms of the teams that Celtic have had in recent years particularly, is that they haven't really had that physical element of them. It's quite a small in stature team, and when you go to Europe at times, particularly any successes that Celtic have had throughout European successes, they've been very dominant, within set pieces. And in recent years that just hasn't been there, and you could probably put it, the success down to a little bit of that, and obviously defensively being a lot more organised and being able to suffer without the ball a bit more.
Do you think they're a weaker team than what they were last term under Ange?
Look, I wouldn't say that, no. I just think it's a developing phase under Brendan again, from going from a successful manager who leaves you. That doesn't necessarily happen a lot of the time when a manager leaves. It's usually you're going in there, like Brendan did the first time, in a sort of situation where everyone wasn't happy with Ronny Deila and the processes of what he was bringing and how they were playing for, albeit they were still winning. But he brought them up a notch, and I think Ange did exactly the same when he came this time round, and it's a lot more challenging as for Brendan to come in and do that right from the off. But it's not been a bad start. They're sitting comfortably at the top of the Scottish Premiership right now, 7 points clear. Yes, they'll be disappointed not being in the League Cup, but there's a lot of football to be played, and they'll still be looking to fight to try and stay in Europe after Christmas, which I hope they can, because again, any Scottish team that can perform and do well in Europe, like the national team are doing, then it bodes well for the game.
Would you have liked to have played alongside Kyogo?
I don't know how we would have fitted in. I don't know now with the system of play how things would. I'd probably have to shift out. I don't think I would have been quick enough to play in that team now, the way that the Celtic like to play and have their wingers high and wide. So, but I would like to be on the end of things for sure.
His movement is fantastic. His game and intelligence and awareness. But do you feel as though you need that when you're a Champions League player? Do you need more than just a bit of heart and a bit of spirit, but you need a bit of intellect about reading the game?
Yeah, of course you do. Look, it was a wonderful finish against Lazio as well. When he's on that last line and the movements that he makes, I think sometimes in European games it's hard because you can't get the eights high enough to support him. Probably one thing you would say is he doesn't want to get involved in the game too much. He's not a platform to play off. In recent years gone by, when Celtic have played, they played with a more physical nine. If you look back in Samaras or Suttons, Larssons, back in those days, he's obviously smaller in stature, and he's not going to pin people and hold it up to bring others into the game. He's always looking to be on that last line, which means you need your eights, because that's how they play with 2 eights, that they need to be in those higher positions. And when they do that, you can see you get success. But it's not always the case. But he's always a threat. What I would say is he probably needs a little bit more support. And I think there's somewhere probably Celtic could look at in the window come January to bring another striker in to sort of help him, support him with the goals, and also put him just a little bit more under pressure as well, to get a little bit more out of him.
You played with a kind of little and large partnership. It almost feels like quite an antiquated system now that the game has moved on so much in the last decade.
It certainly has. It's developed so differently, I think, from the Pep Guardiola days of Barcelona, when everyone's seen what he was doing. It totally. I always say that Pep Guardiola killed me in the sense of how things were played. It was great. Obviously, later in my career, I moved down to England after I left Celtic. I had to change. I had to evolve. I had to play in different roles, whether it was playing out wide left of a 3 or in a 10, or even playing in 2 eights. That helped me learn a lot more about the game, and probably has helped me now, more so than if I had just played and stayed as a 9 throughout my career. But the little and large has gone. However, I think we're seeing now more so fashionably a lot more teams playing 4-4-2 again. So it is slightly coming back, but there's so much work to be done in terms of developing now the next generation of goal scorers and wanting to be a goal scorer, because a lot of period for probably the last decade or 15 years, kids always want to be Lionel Messi. They want to be that number 10 in the pockets. But we're even seeing now that trend's coming out of the game, and it's more playing with 2 eights that go higher and pin high, and you have the one striker that becomes the false 9 and comes in and plays off in those spaces. So it's going to be interesting to see how that now develops, and even wingers are coming back into the game. That was one of the evident things talking to the Premier League teams, that they want ball carriers, 1v1 players, getting at players, which Celtic have had in recent years and had success.
Just before we go, I need to ask you about the summer too in Australia. Fantastic success of the Women's World Cup. You'd have been privy to that. What were your thoughts on it? Some of the attendances were spectacular.
Yeah, well, I was lucky enough to be part of the obviously the campaign and doing some of the punditry work and whatnot, and it was amazing. Even for me to be a part of the women's game and get a better understanding of some of the world class talent that's within the game, and how it's growing, and how the game's evolving and getting faster as well, and much more physical, like we've seen in the men's game. But the women's game is doing exactly the same thing now, and that's because of the money that's getting put into it and the professionalism that's coming to it. And see the WSL down in England, and you see Scottish League now getting bigger as well, and Celtic and Rangers have now grew teams to challenge Glasgow City. So the game's evolving, and like you said there, what was really amazing was the crowds. It wasn't just Matilda's games where we were getting sellouts all across the whole tournament, which made it so partisan. And it was nice to go down the streets and see all the different colours and the support, and just everyone having a good time. And really in Australia's never seen that before when it comes to world football. So there is big talks now of Australia now bidding for the Men's World Cup, which would be amazing, because we have all the venues. So it'd be great for the game as well, and what the women's games managed to do for Australian football, particularly during, as all people did, it was tough in COVID, but financially I think the FA were in a bit of strife. And if it wasn't for the Matildas, you have to say, in terms of their success then, and bringing sponsorship in and everything else, then I think it would have been an even bigger struggle.
Oh, that's incredible. And the home support seemed to really embrace and really take it. The challenge now, of course, is to sustain that interest and kick it on. Yeah,
and that's the tough part. I think Ange come out and sort of battered it the other day and said there is no legacy. Actually, he was quite brutal in what his thoughts were. Look, it's hard to not agree with him, because we're fighting against 3-4 different codes of sport in Australia, and there's a huge resilience, from the other codes to give football a chance and to give them any airtime. So we're always up against that. We're always up against, like, Scotland has the challenges of facilities and improving them for younger generations, even at community level, and we're having the same struggles back home. But the women's game's really, really helping that in terms of developing it and allowing more facility to be opened for not just the women's side and girls' side, but also holistically for the game.
Thank you very much, Scott. I really appreciate your time. Good luck on your coaching journey, and we might have you back in again soon.
Pleasure, as always. Thank you.
Thank you.